Chairman. First off, I myself had the pleasure of watching the eclipse with students and their families at the Joliet Library's solar eclipse viewing party in my district. And like our panelists and the members here, I was really encouraged to see people from every walk of life taking an interest in science just because of the eclipse. But, you know, I'm a scientist, so I tend to like numbers about things. And a few weeks ago, I became aware of a NASA-funded research project led by Dr. John Miller of the University of Michigan to actually quantify who viewed the eclipse, how people prepared for it, gathered information for it ahead of time, when and how they viewed it, and in the months and weeks following, how you know, the effects that it had on their scientific engagement and literacy. So this seemed like it was precisely the sort of you know, fact-based public engagement that NASA should be engaged in. So I was thrilled to see this report, and I would like at this point to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a preliminary version of the report. Thank you, by Dr. John Miller, entitled Americans and Their 2017 Solar Eclipse. And so that, with that out of the way, well, one of the things I just want to mention about this is that one of the, just to capture one sentence from his report, he said, during the 2 months prior to the eclipse, millions of American adults engaged in a wide array of information seeking and acquisition activities to improve their understanding of the forthcoming event. And trying to really understand that, and you know, I understand that you know, Dr. Miller has a very aggressive program of expanding this, is looking at things like social media, and so to actually quantify this. And I think I just want to, if any of you have any specific familiarity with that, I'd be happy to hear comments on it.
So this study was funded out of the STEM activation parts of our Science Mission Director, and we're really excited about it. Of course, both the coverage that, you know, we managed to get all together, right? Kind of, it's not just one source. It's also, what I wanted to point out also is, of course, that a lot of the studies are still ongoing. So I'm really glad you're looking at this initial report, but we'll make sure that we draw your attention to the final report once it's being completed. I mean, I really want to make sure that we look at it just like you said. We feel it's absolutely crucial to use the tool of social sciences, you know, to really make sure that our outreach efforts are targeted and are also up to date as things are changing as we go forward.
Well, thank you. It's always nice to see government doing its job well. Now, to get to a little bit of scientific things here, how much overlap is there between preparation and mitigation for coronal mass injection events and EMP events caused by potential nuclear attacks? Is this now a completely separate set of preparation and mitigation, or are there enough similarities about what you have to protect, even though obviously the time structure and intensity of the pulses are very different?
So I can say a few words about that, which I've fortunately learned from listening to my FEMA colleagues at the Space Weather Task Force, which is they have lots of plans on the shelf, and when they start thinking about, okay, what's going to be the result of a space weather event, then they go to their shelf and they say, here's the kind of thing we have that looks a lot like a space weather event. And so an EMP pulse that you just mentioned, I imagine, is one of the things that they would say looks kind of like a space weather event. So within at least my organization, within NSF, we don't sort of engage in that activity, but I think what they do is they sort of take as a starting point what they already have. So rather than starting from scratch, they say, okay, what's different about a solar event from another event that we've studied? And that means they're not starting from square zero.
So one of the major differences between the two events is the geographic extent of the event. And so basically, the real worry about a solar event of the type that Dr. Hamill outlined earlier is that it would be regional in nature. And so basically what would happen in an electrical system, it would overload as a regional type of thing. So far less is a local thing like lightning or even a pulse of the type that you're outlining. So there are similarities relative to the physics locally with the electric fields going up and so forth, how the systems react, but there's real differences relative to the geographic event and therefore the overall extent of the damage that could occur from it.
Right. And of course, all nuclear EMP events are not created equal, depending on altitude and related things. Well, it's nice. I just want to encourage you to actually, share your planning on that, because, neither of the two events, unfortunately, are low probability events. And often dealing with low probability, high damage events is something that, our democracy does not do that well. And so I'm encouraged to see that you're at least thinking about part of that problem. Well, thank you. And at that point, I'll yield back.
Thank you. And again, I thank our witnesses for